doing a host throughout history, which, surprise, Confidante, we're not doing a host throughout history with Jasmine. What is going on? Since it is Mental Health Month, obviously want to give all the trigger warnings and, you know, be respectful of Jasmine's story and just know that, you know, listen to your heart's content, but keep yourself safe and also support. We love supporting our guests and keep the comments cute. Hi, Jazz. You're here.
Hi.
I was saying off camera, like every time Jazz and I do this, especially over quarantine, it's like, I haven't seen you in 6 months. I haven't talked to you like a good chat in 6 months. What is up? What is new? What is your favorite thing? What are you doing? Like, just give me the lowdown so we can go on to the topic.
Okay, so honestly, the past like month, maybe like 3 weeks has not been the vibe for me.
It was.
I was just literally in therapy at 2.
And then you
like
came here?
yeah.
God, I love you. You really are my fucking soulmate. You're like, trauma, let's go public.
Truly. But I was just telling her that like things have been feeling like so repetitious lately for me, where I like wake up, eat breakfast, work, let out the dog, work, eat, go to bed. Like literally that is it.
Every day.
And every day. And I'm feeling like
monotonous.
I just like, yeah, but then on top of that, I'm not motivated to do anything else.
Ooh, high depression.
Yeah. So then I'm like going back and forth, like making myself feel guilty for not doing other things. I don't want to do anything else. And then I'm still dealing with like all my other stuff.
Right.
So.
Oh, did she give any like helpful advice at least to walk away with?
Oh, for sure. And I know like, honestly, something that she's always telling me is just like, maybe this is when you just like sit with that.
Ooh. Oh, I hate and love her at the same time.
I was like, ma'am.
Ma'am, this is not why I pay you to give me the truth.
Exactly.
Oh, I mean, I've been spitting that out at people, but it's so hard to take your own advice, isn't it?
So
like
hard.
sit in that uncomfortability, like get curious about it. And I'm like, I don't want to sit with myself for 30 minutes.
No.
In my own body. That sounds like a bad time.
That's why I'm mad.
Well, I'm so glad we're entering this just angry as we should be at the fucking world. No, but I think it's like kind of perfect, right? Like Mental Health Month is happening right now. We're slammed with content about it from all angles. Brands love to take a moment and be a part of something and shove it down your throat. And you're like, okay, get in the back of the line. But I think it's one of those things where we're also trying to be advocates and it can feel a little false sometimes, but that's kind of also our bread and butter is not being perfect. It's showing our real true selves to the world. And that's, I think, the most important thing about Mental Health Month is like just showing your truth.
Exactly. And it's just like, I don't know, it's just so nice to see how other people feel and to know that like, you know, you're not alone.
Totally.
My friend Sage.
Sage, writing that down for future baby names.
And their Instagram is like Sage Aflaka, I think.
Oh my God, I love.
And they made like a reel about like OCD and compulsions.
I watched it.
Yes.
You posted it.
Yes. And I was like, first of all, me and Sage, we're friends and I've never like talked to them about this.
Really?
Yeah.
And so you had no idea.
All, exactly. It was just so nice to be like, oh, that's a friend that's like me.
Yes.
So I do like the part of like, you know, seeing people in different ways and knowing you're not that different.
Well, speaking about Sage's reel, it is about the topic that we're talking about today, which is OCD. And I have to like put it up front. That's probably the symptom of anxiety that I know the least about, but fear the most, that I kind of have seen things in me where, like, I was walking down the stairs yesterday and I didn't pick something up on the way down. And in my head, it went, if you don't pick that up, you're going to have a bad day. If you don't pick that up, you're a piece of shit. If you don't pick that up, you're trash. Like, why wouldn't you just pick that up, you dumb bitch? And then I went to like, why am I yelling at myself? It's just a thing. It will be there later. And by that time, I'm halfway down the stairs already in the bedroom. And I'm like, 15 seconds of my life were gone.
Yeah.
But I think I'm aware enough to notice when it's happening and fight that urge, which makes me think, okay, I don't think I have OCD or OCDP necessarily, but I think I have it as a symptom of anxiety for sure. Yeah. But I mean, obviously, like, hello, you've been out and proud about your journey, and I've never been more proud of you just being honest about how it is and the truth about it. And Sage is Real was saying, you know, not everyone's OCD looks the same. It's not always numbers or being clean or, you know, I don't know all the other ones, but I was hoping you could kind of like not only be our little expert, but also the expert to what is your experience with this.
Yeah. And that's like first and foremost where I'm coming from here, because like I've only been like, first of all, yes, everybody's different. And second of all, like I have not been like researching everything about this when it's not like pertaining to me, you know?
Yeah.
But I was very surprised, like when I've started going to OCD therapy, you know, you do the little like intake forms, and there are so many like different types of like OCD and the symptoms and compulsions. Yeah.
I did not know that.
There's definite like counting. There is like thoughts, like just like overthinking about your thoughts. There is
maybe
like
I do have it
sexual things. There's just so many.
Wow.
And every time I get like a new therapist or go through new stuff, I'm like, oh my gosh, I think about everything that I go through, and then I'm like, oh, think of all these other people going through this stuff. Like, I can only like
it's a whole community of fuckery.
Truly, it is just a lot. And way more than like cleaning something,
which is the trope, right? Like we think of it as, you know, anyone that's organized is OCD. Like we know society has demeaned the word, you know, same with panic attacks, same with bipolar. It's like this, I feel like, is maybe the most overused and like disrespected term of the mental illnesses. I kind of want to back up a little bit and just ask, like, when did this start for you, and when did it start enough for you to go, I think I need help?
Yes. So when it started for me was honestly around when I first got to Los Angeles. A very, very light amount, but like, especially, no, you want to know what? It wasn't a light, it was a light amount, but it was only when I flew. Like I was in a routine.
No.
Yes, it was only when I flew. So I will list this out for you because I'm comfortable enough now. So before I flew, first of all, say I had a flight on Saturday, I would not sleep Monday to Saturday. I would barely eat. I would like nonstop be shitting. Like, like just terrible. I would not pack until like the night before.
Oh my God.
And usually I took like, I would make sure my flights are at 5 or 6 a.m. Just so I could like
sleep.
No, so I could see, like, because that's usually when it gets like light out.
Because you don't want to fly in darkness.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I see.
And so I'm like, this feels the safest.
Right.
So I would pack like very last minute, like sometimes very many times I would like fall asleep and like wake up in a panic like an hour before I
Oh
have
my
to go.
God.
And this was like every time I have flown in the past 5 years, this is what I did.
Yes.
And so I would pack my stuff. I would call my Uber. I had to make sure I had a bag of gummy bears in my
Ooh, love that.
bag.
Not
I
mad
know,
about
right?
that. Happy for that. That one's a good one.
On my way there, I had to, like, if I heard any songs on the radio that had to do with death or something, I was like, this means that I'm gonna die. I would have to look and see like at least one plane coming and landing in because that equaled my safety. I wore the
Wow.
same outfit for the last 5 years on every plane
Oh
I have
my
been on.
God.
I had
There
to
were
keep,
so many little
like,
things.
I'm not even like that's not even like the fullness of everything.
Oh
And
my
yes, that
gosh.
is what I did every year. I mean,
Ugh.
every time I flew for the
And
last
it's
5 years.
probably a lot of things that aren't named, right? Like it's in
Yeah.
your head. No, I say in your head. I mean, like it's internal
Mm-hmm.
for so long.
No
No
one
one's
would know.
knowing.
No, no one would know.
Wow. And that's such a weight that I bet to even have on your body undiagnosed, to just be like, this is the
Mm-hmm.
thing I have to do. This means this. Like,
Yep.
step on a crack, break your mama's back. Like I
Uh-huh.
took that literally and it followed me into adulthood, into like the way
Yes.
that I take steps and shit. And I'm like,
Yes.
this is dumb. And I never validate my symptoms of it.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine how many things there probably are that even
Mm-hmm.
like don't get named because it's literally a routine.
Completely.
Oh, and so when you got to LA,
Well, so in the years since, I have realized that I probably was experiencing this before I got to
mm,
LA, not
yeah.
specifically with planes, but when
Mm,
I was younger in my teens and had like an eating disorder, that
mm,
definitely plays a role with anxiety and control and
yes.
routine.
Right.
And
100%.
I was very like, all the blinds had to be closed a certain way. The
Ooh.
doors had to be locked like by me. Like my parents could lock the doors in front of me and I would go and relock them.
Wow.
And that was like before
Safety.
I
Yeah.
realized 100%
Yeah.
safety.
Yeah.
Which makes sense with the airplane thing,
Yeah.
and everything like that as well.
Isn't it kind of funny that, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off
No,
before you
you're fine.
said, but like, isn't it kind of funny that it all comes from like a survival tactic of like, you love yourself and you're trying to protect yourself the best way you possibly can, but you're like, you're ruining my fucking life.
It's wild. It is wild how our brains work. It truly is wild.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
survival, I guess.
Yeah. Um, but then what I realized, like I knew I had the plane thing, right?
Yeah.
But never did I feel like it was showing up much in my life
Mm,
otherwise. But then I think it was about 3 years ago.
when you popped off in
Um,
the internet space, when that was probably like 4 years ago.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
this was like maybe like 2.5, 3 years ago. There was an earthquake in LA, and that
Oof.
just
I think
triggered
about you every
everything.
time now. I'm like, oh my God, is she okay? I think that's become part of my panic. My panic kit is I'm like, are the cats okay? Is anything broken? Is Jasmine okay? What, so
Truly. I love
it's
it when you text me.
I know, I'm like 4 in the morning. Are you okay?
Truly.
Of course, it always happens when you're dead ass asleep, relaxed in your dream world, finally in
Girl,
your safe space. It's rude.
I have theories.
Oh, I would love to hear them. I will totally play into paranoia every day. But like, hello, earthquake, lack of control, safety. That is no surprise that it is a fucking trigger for your OCD.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
how
It
does that
is.
manifest when something like an earthquake?
So when it first happened, I was just like very caught off guard, and immediately went into like kind of the most it was showing up was in my morning routine and in my nighttime routine. So in the morning, I would have to wake up like an hour before I actually had to wake up and like do my stuff, pick out like certain clothes that I was comfortable wearing, which would take like a while, because this shirt could mean that I was gonna like die. This shirt could mean that my family was gonna die. Like this could mean something. And then I had to like pack my bag, pick it up, put it down, pick it up, put it like,
wow.
And then going to bed was even like harder because just the fear of like nighttime and something happening. I would usually like sleep honestly like fully dressed with shoes on because and my lights on, because I would just be so exhausted with doing my routine that I wouldn't even like take off my shoes or unwind. I would just pass out.
And you're like ready to go if anything happens.
Yeah. Just like,
you know, I mean, it's not surprising too that it showed up most in your morning and night routine of spaces where you're alone, because when you would come to work and when I would see you, you know, this isn't like an obvious thing like you've seen in like MTV docs or whatever, where the person's like counting the things and touching the, like I wasn't watching you do that in public spaces. And so to know how much you were suffering at home, like that's such a fucking weight to exist with, and then go do what you do. It's not like you go to a 9 to 5 and kind of like turn your brain on and off and work it for the man and go home. You're like building a fucking empire and brand on your own back. And I have to imagine that like you must be tired.
Completely. Yes.
Yes.
It was also like something that I've realized, of course, in the past year of quarantine is like this past year has allowed me the privilege to take time and realize my stuff. And before I was like, work, another club.
She does love her club. She looks good in them too. I support.
But I was like, you know, we have events to go to. We have dinners to go to. We have all that shit. So I was keeping myself busy and surrounded by people enough that it didn't come into play so much.
Oh, interesting. It's like keeping yourself distracted. That's kind of like with, you know, panic or anxiety. The first thing you want to do is get your brain out of its own way. Right.
Yeah.
And so I guess like when I wrote the book, I had talked a little bit again, like as OCD as a symptom, not necessarily something that I manage, but that there is obsessive compulsive disorder and obsessive compulsive personality disorder, which is OCD and OCPD. I think I said it backwards earlier, but the distinction is that OCD causes the person distress if the action isn't completed or the ritual isn't performed, whereas OCPD is a relief almost.
Interesting.
I had no idea two things existed.
Yeah, I'm not too familiar, to be honest.
Yeah, I know. I had to do a little bit of research and like talk to people about being like, what exactly do you mean by like relief, where it's not interfering with their day-to-day abilities. Whereas like, you know, everyone has anxiety, but when it becomes debilitating, it becomes OCD and it's a disorder, right? But what do we think about the word? And I know I quote you almost bitch like every week when I say labels are to make other people comfortable. JAZZMYNE Robbins. I say it like a motivational quote, like that's on my poster, but like, we know that that's true. We do. But like, that was in the term, I think, of probably sexuality that we were talking about, or like dating. But with mental health, how do you feel about diagnoses and disorder or label?
So for where I am now in my life, it has helped me. Finding out that like, okay, you definitely struggle with OCD. These are the people that I should be talking to, the type of therapist that I need, not just like a regular therapist. I shouldn't be doing like talk therapy. I should be doing a different type of therapy, you know, and just understanding more. And also being diagnosed with PTSD too. Like I wouldn't like just grab that. Oh
yeah,
like
it me,
you know.
yeah,
Exactly.
and I have to imagine that those coexist in a way that we don't talk about enough, the same way that like often there's a dual diagnoses kind of involved.
Yeah.
I
So
obviously don't want to pry too much into the PTSD, but like, how did that help inform the kind of explanation of it all?
yeah, well, I kind of like I'm very much still understanding what that is for me. And now I'm at least just a little bit more aware
Mm,
about like what triggers that for me, which
mm,
is like great but also terrifying.
mm.
Like I was me and Kate were like unpacking like a package that I got, and there was like, you know, the plastic that's a bubble.
Yeah.
They popped that and I like instantly started crying. I
Oh, and
was
you're
like,
like, who knew?
right, I'm like absolutely terrified, like crying, like caught off guard, like
Just a
just
total reaction of
yeah,
pure survival
just
instinct.
distress,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I actually talked to my friend Dan, who was telling me, who has PTSD also, and he was saying that there's no way for him to like describe PTSD, but he was like,
Mm,
when you're in just a regular everyday life and you're acting weird because of something, but
mm.
you can't talk about it, that is PTSD.
Damn. Just for a quick break, my sweet confidants, you know that we are coming out of this pandemic. We are getting vaccinated. We are going back on the world. And I don't know about you, but I'm feeling a ton of agoraphobia, getting back out into the world. I am like super nervous, which is why I keep scheduling appointments with BetterHelp. Come on, confidants. You already know that I believe therapy should be affordable, inclusive. Nothing should be interfering with your happiness, which is why I use BetterHelp. It's not self-help, it's professional counseling. And the best part is you can start communicating with a therapist in under 24 hours. Licensed professional counselors are specialized in depression, stress, anxiety, relationships, sleeping, trauma, anger, family conflicts, LGBT matters, grievance. What don't they do? You know what I'm saying? Don't forget, anything you share is confidential here. It's convenient, it's professional, and most importantly, it is affordable. In fact, so many people have been using BetterHelp that they're recruiting an additional 50 counselors in all 50 states. Geography. We love to see it. And I want you to start living a happier life today. As a listener, you're going to get 10% off your first month by visiting betterhelp.com/CI. Join over 1 million people taking charge of their mental health. Again, that's BetterHelp, HELP.com/CI. Damn, I feel like that's hella relatable. Like that could be applicable to panic a little bit for me. Wow.
Yeah.
That's a good way of saying it.
Exactly. I was like, oh, that makes way more sense. Like at least just like on the path of understanding.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, so you mentioned too about the treatment and not going to like regular talk therapy and going to like OCD specific therapy. And I know you've been doing like other podcasts and stuff kind of talking about it. And I remember you had mentioned Lele Pons coming out with her, was it a YouTube series that she did about hers?
Yeah, it was a documentary.
That was the first time that I had ever seen what OCD therapy can look like. And it stressed me out to the point where I was like, I have to turn this off, because watching her try to manage and struggle was like, couldn't watch it. And so can you talk a little bit about what OCD specific therapy looks like and feels like for you?
Yeah, it's
Deep breath.
very different.
Yeah.
I love therapy, and I'm like, sit down, let me tell you about this.
Yeah.
And so OCD therapy is under CBT, which I think is cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yeah.
Which this is my first time being introduced to that in general.
Cool.
So usually with the OCD therapy that I go to, I like go in. We don't basically like pay mind to the emotions that are happening when I talk about OCD, because that's all playing into what OCD wants me to be. So if I think about like, and talk about like, oh, well, I have to do this because I love my family and I want them to be safe, then I'm creating like a narrative of feelings, when in reality, this is just like something that my brain is doing that I am not connected to.
Whoa.
So yeah,
that's important to know that you don't have to be connected to it
completely.
Whoa.
So to just like go in and not talk about how I feel about it, I'm already like pissed.
Because I have to imagine it's like being like, don't think about a pink elephant. And then you're like,
right.
all I can think about is a pink elephant. And
exactly.
But I guess that's part of it. That's part 100%. Of breaking the habit.
And then from there, we kind of go on and label the things like I do daily. And what I've done, I've started with a new therapist who I love, but in my previous therapy, we kind of went through a, like, say I do 20 things a day, and we're going to rank those from the very bottom to like what brings me the most absolute stress. Ooh. And let's work on 3 at the very bottom right now. So let's say it's washing my hands and walking away. Let's say it is only doing 1 turn of salt when I put salt on my stuff. And let's say it is not checking, no, that'll create more. Let's say it's not responding to a text right away. So those are just like 3 things that I focus on and try to do that my OCD is connected with, but I can take a step back from those and not have like a complete breakdown, unraveling of my day. So and then you kind of build up.
I mean, it reminds me of a therapy that I did to get over my claustrophobia of getting locked in the trunk of a car. Like my therapist was like, we're going to start at standing in a closet by yourself. And then we're going to work out, work out. That was middle is getting locked in the trunk of a car. Now that I've been able to do that, it's cave diving, which you know me, when I set out to do shit, I will do it eventually. And this is something that I have been not doing. So it's like, it's in the future. I just don't know when I'm going to try and conquer that fear. I can't even think about it without, okay. Anyways, back to your trauma.
Years, honey. Thank you. Years.
There's no timeline on this.
Truly.
So like for viewers on youtube.com/Kelsey Darragh and Confidante listening, can you explain that feeling of when you're putting the salt on your meal and the desire to keep going, or I guess like not the desire, it's like the instinct and obsession and the pull to keep going versus how you detach yourself from the physical like thing?
Yeah. So what I'm working on now is, okay, so when I have that thought in my head, it's very like, it's quick.
It is.
But it's also like a step down from life or death. Ooh. But it is very like, something bad is going to happen and this is the result. Like you have it all in your hands. You have the control in this salt shaker in your hands.
Wow.
And so what I'm trying now to do is to, okay, I'll do it. And then I'll notice that this is happening.
Yep.
And then I'll literally just like take a step back and be present. So I will name 5 colors that I see.
Yes.
I will name like 4 smells that I can smell right now.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Exactly. So that was something that I asked my therapist if I could do because it helps me. I started doing that on planes when I did fly. And I think it just helps me be more centered because I am a very like, especially with OCD, I'm very like reactive. Like I'm gonna, okay, if you're telling me I just have to turn the salt 4 more times,
why wouldn't I fucking do it? Yeah.
Right. You know?
It's like, and who are we talking to? I don't know. The universe, me, my subconscious. Like, I noticed the voice too. And I'm like, it's me saying it, but why would I ever say that or think that?
Right.
Like I would never come up with that thought on a regular day-to-day function. But I love the implementation of mindfulness, right? It's like the forcing yourself to reckon with the real reality that's in front of you versus that shit in your head that we all know we could live in. It's cozy up there. They got cookies. Yep. It's inviting. You could be up there all day. And so do you find like what are the treatments or exercises, kind of like you mentioned, that you find are the most helpful? Is it, you know, like I find like avoidance to be a thing that I know is not helpful. Like if I'm like, I'll just not go back up the stairs. I'm like, well, that's not going to fucking help.
Avoidance.
Not so good.
Very much is not play in role here.
Yeah.
I think that it's so hard. I feel like, well, first of all, what helps me is my medicine.
Amen.
Like, yes, being on Zoloft. I just upped my prescription.
Congrats.
I feel like very good.
Oh, good.
So, yes, that's awesome. I'm very, very thankful for that. But other than that, I think it's first of all me like keeping a balance of like, okay, especially with how I think, I can't get obsessed with getting obsessed. Ooh, so you know what I'm saying?
That was meta.
Like I can't make it my obsession to stop being obsessed.
No, because then that's like you're gonna fix something. And if you could do that, you would be a billionaire.
Yeah, all I'm doing is just like feeding it.
Yeah.
So I try to be present, and when I notice me doing things, like something happened the other day where I like have to put the remote control on like a certain cushion at like a certain time of day. And I just did it yesterday. And I was like, wow, I haven't done this in a while. I was like, why did I just do that? Like, why did I do that?
It was like automatic.
Exactly. And so taking note and realizing that and trying very hard not to do that, but also like honestly just sitting in that presence and like questioning myself, and not like, it would have been one thing if I would have walked away and been like, yeah, that's normal, that's what I'm supposed to do, you know, but it's
we're not. Like, oh, she's in denial.
Exactly.
Right.
So just like staying present, keeping check on myself, but not so much where I'm like, you know, going overboard and stopping myself every second and stuff like that. You know?
Like, do you ever just go like, fuck it, and twist the salt 4 more times and go like, right now I'm not trying to like work on myself.
Completely.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's give and take. But I think that's like the gradual about working up to that list of things that like, okay, what sets me off the most, you know? It's not all just gonna disappear. Our minds are beautiful. So wild.
Yeah. Well, so I have a couple more questions in like as it pertains to kind of like the culture of OCD, because again, I think it's maybe the most the one that's used most flippantly within society, and I don't know that I've seen a ton of media that isn't like super exaggerated with it. So, I mean, first of all, is this something you ever imagined your life being like? And now that you're in it, how do we help advocate? You know what I fucking mean.
It's so weird because I feel like the only reason that OCD is portrayed the way that it is specifically for like TVs and movies and film, because it doesn't mean anything to like the general public if you say OCD unless they see it.
Oh,
like you can physically show what depression is,
right?
You know, but if you just say, oh yeah, I have OCD, and then you're walking around doing,
you're like okay,
exactly.
yeah.
But you need to show like being extra clean or counting something or something like that.
Yeah.
Which that is the case for some people with OCD, but not for everybody.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So I think
it must be like, a majority. Like, you know, there's a reason why there's a trope of that way, because it seems like a very common symptom and maybe one that's easily to write off. And like, you know, I know a big thing was when Khloe Kardashian started having like a segment on her website called like CloCD, where she was like showing different cleaning techniques and organization techniques. And at first people were like, yeah, like that's not how you use the word. And then people were also like, well, how do you know it's not something she's like off camera clearly struggling with, and we're trying to turn it into like a funny segment? And, you know, I think people are a little bit like, we know what the Kardashians do. So I mean, like,
I was gonna say, we know because she's making money from it. That's how we fucking know.
But I thought it really brought up a bigger, better conversation of like, are we doing advocacy in the right way for it? Are we seeing enough? Like, how can we help? How can we show up?
To me, and this is how I look at, honestly, pretty much anything. Believe people.
Ooh, big tip.
Believe people.
That's the new one. Believe people. JAZZMYNE Robbins.
Like, I don't care if we're talking about mental health, sexuality, gender, like anything. Like, if you're telling me this is what you have and this is what you think, then like, I believe you. You know,
validation, support.
For sure. What I think though is very important is that we realize what goes on in society, you know, because there was a time during those times of like the MTV documentaries, what was it called? True Life?
Yes.
Where there was specifically an OCD one.
Yeah.
And everyone that I knew that saw it was like, I have it. I touched my Walkman 8 times today. I have it, you know, and I'm
interesting.
Like, I feel like sometimes there are like a lot of yes. And so I think it is important to at least talk to people about it or research more.
Yeah.
And this is also where it sucks, because like, I would love to say you can trust every fucking doctor and psychiatrist
not on this podcast
there, but we can't, you know.
It seems like it's not taken that seriously unless you're in that that specific trade of OCD training, like that it shows up in various forms, maybe.
Well, and even like, I remember when I went to the gynecologist, who she was like a all around type of doctor, where like we talked about my mental stuff first and then we went into everything else. And when we talked in her office, she was talking to me about like, do you suffer from anxiety or depression or anything? And I remember telling her when I was a teenager, I was like, I get really anxious about time. Like, in my head, like if I have to be somewhere, I have to leave at a certain amount of time, and I'll get very overwhelmed if I don't. And I was talking to her, which I still suffer from. I was talking to her.
Hasn't changed much.
This, truly. And she was like, no, that's not a thing.
Oh.
And I was like,
I don't want you looking at my pussy if you don't even listen to me in the office. Like,
she was like, yeah, no, that's not what I'm talking about here. And then looking back at things now,
you're like, okay, oh, my journey.
If someone could have realized like, okay, Jazzmyne was feeling this way about time, had an eating disorder, clearly about like control. Like, if somebody put that all together, we probably could have like
bippity boppity boob.
came up with a little bit something sooner than
but like,
a 30-year-old with
okay,
OCD.
first of all, you're very, very successful and a wonderful person and a good person and a strong partner and all of these things. So I don't need to like gas you up, but like, don't you feel like also that it is time of being able to even recognize, like, we're in our fucking 20s. We didn't go to medical school. How are we supposed to acknowledge these things or name them or validate them ourselves? We're coming to you to get advice. And if we go up a town or a place or a religion or a whatever, like I try and always give like little Kelsey like a pat on the back, just like, I know.
You were trying.
You were really, it's not your fault kind of thing. Yeah.
Truly. No, I definitely agree.
Yeah. I was going to say, I am heavily subscribed to mental health TikTok. And I really love the OCD community on TikTok because I think exactly what you're saying. They're a little bit more like blunt with their stuff of being like, this is what OCD is. You do not have OCD. Like it's not something that anyone wants or can imagine how stressful it really is. Like you guys think it's just cleaning and organizing. You have no fucking clue. And there's like an emphasis on the severity of it that I don't see anywhere else. And that was kind of the first time that I realized like, oh my God. Okay. So like I'm able to kind of compare and see the realness of someone who does kind of, you know, manage and struggle and puts it out there. And so I guess like, do you see hope for yourself and others that have this thing that maybe we don't have completely curable yet?
Yeah, I definitely, at least with like bringing up like TikTok and social media and people being more willing to speak about that stuff, and like Lele Pond's documentary,
huge.
It's just like I was talking to her recently. I was just on her podcast and she was telling me about like some type of experience where basically, you know, when we meet people and they're like, oh, I love you. You made it so easy for me to show my parents what this means, you know, because sometimes a lot of parents and like guardians don't understand mental health, and generationally we know that's
a whole thing
completely. So to be able that we can at least make content, somebody can show this podcast to their parent and be like, I've been telling you, like, this is what's going on and this is what's going on. Please listen to this.
Like, use us. We've been fucking through it. We're 30. Do you see these wrinkles? This is your proof.
Truly.
Wrapping up, I'd love to get a couple of tips too for maybe like partners that have a loved one or something, because I know that could probably be its whole own episode. I could do with like Kate, but I'd love to hear it from you. Just, you know, again, like I've seen TikToks where it's been like, my girlfriend trusts me to do her rituals at night. And like, that's how you know it's love, is that she lets him go, and he really does and goes and does all of it and like, you know, spreads awareness. But maybe, I don't know, do you have a parting tip for our confidants?
I think the best thing that I have experienced with Kate, period. is just having a partner believe me, trust me, and be sympathetic and empathetic. You know,
you're asking for a lot from men, from straight men when you say that. Maybe that's like number one. Don't date a straight guy. No,
truly.
but that's like, that's a basic human like thing you would hope a partner would have. But then it feels like an extra layer. You're like asking for, hey, not just regular life, but I want to be seen as someone who deserves that extra layer, because I shouldn't be treated as a burden, but also this is fucking life, you know, this is my truth.
And for me, I wasn't aware and didn't pay attention to all my mental health shit before in relationships. So I never dated people that were doing any more work than I was. Definitely not. Not
we
at
know.
All.
We have receipts.
Literally not at all. But having somebody that I feel is similar to me in my mental health journey, and Kate deals with mental health stuff that I don't understand at all. Wow. But what's important is that I'm there for them.
Right.
And I have communicated with them about the ways that, like, okay, what can I do to help you while you're doing this? I don't have to understand it.
Right.
I don't have to know it. I don't need to be anything. Like, how can I show up for you? You know? In a healthy way.
In a healthy way. Caveat. Yeah. But like, that should just be like standard across the board. That's like great. Just advice just for any couples with mental health, which is spoiler alert, 100% of us. And like, I always love talking to you. Time fucking flies by. I hate that this has been an hour already, but also I think it's really important, you know, like every time we see each other, it's always like gassing each other up, but truly like you talking about this the same way that you're talking about Lele Pons, like that is what you are doing as well. Like that impact and that importance to keep your journey as possible, like as comfortable as possible, sharing that with people is going to be life-changing for people. Right. So I just want to thank you.
Thank you for having me and for like providing this community. And even like you maybe not even like 100% relating, but opening up your platform so everybody can relate is beautiful.
Yeah, you have to. We have to. Thank you. We should just go back and forth saying thank you for the next.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. Jazz, where can the people find you? Even though you've been a guest on here so many times, which we have to catch up on hosts throughout history. I've got like 10 motherfucking hosts. I feel like the pandemic just was like, cancel everything, stop all the fun. Yeah. Now we're fully vaxxed and we should bring back a host throughout history, but tell the people where we can find you, please.
You can find me on Instagram and Twitter under JAZZMYNE and on TikTok as TikTok with 4 eyes.
I was waiting for how you were going to describe that. TikTok is where I want to be. JAZZMYNE, I love you. Maybe like next mental health month, we can get an update. Wouldn't that be fun? We call a journey here.
Here we go.
Round 1. Little journey, a little diary moment. Confidants, happy mental health month. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Check in, show up, ask how you can be there. And you know what? You can rate this podcast. That's how you can be there for me. It would make my mental health feel a little bit better. I saw only 5-star reviews, because if it's less than 5 stars, what? Don't rate it at all, because I'm very sensitive. Speaking of sensitive, the merch is out now. Yes. You can also probably get the Anxiety Queen shirt on my website by now. I don't know. JAZZMYNE, I love you. Go enjoy the rest of your day. I'll talk to you on text soon. I love you.
Yes.
All right. Bye.